All right. Hello, everyone. Just going to give it a couple minutes here to kick off um, while people flow in. I still see a lot of folks joining. Excited to have everybody today. And we'll give it something like another 120 seconds or so before we kick off here, just while we get everything queued up. And while we do that, I'm going to get my slides going here. And I'm going to give it about one more minute here. Appreciate everyone joining. We got a lot of folks on the line today. Yeah, really excited to share what we've been working on, and happy haven't had a live webinar since the end of tax season. So happy after April 15th for everybody. All right, with that, I think we jump in. Yeah, appreciate everybody joining today. We're going to talk about business returns, and we're going to spend a lot of the time going through the new business return. And when I say business, I'm going to just say business, but let me just say up front, I mean 1120, 1120S, and 1065. So partnerships and S Corps and corporations. Um, and going to share with you guys the automation that we put together for those tax returns. And I've got Jason Smith with me. We're going to do an intro here momentarily. I have a little bit of housekeeping, but I'll introduce Jason in just a minute and have him talk about his firm a little bit. He's an EA who works on a CAS practice. That is both, bookkeeping and tax work. And so, Jason, sit tight for just a hot minute. I have to go through my housekeeping list. My team, they put in this slide last minute to make sure I don't forget to tell you all of these things. So it's going to be recorded. This is being recorded. We will send you a recording afterwards. We're going to send that to you with actually some extra information as well. Like we're going to share the exports with you guys so you can see each type of tax software and how the export works. For that, we have integrations. So this all launches tomorrow, which I'll talk about here shortly. You should have actual access if you're a Juno um, customer, or if you are in a trial, you will have access to this tomorrow. So we are pushing it live tomorrow. This is not like, hey, this is gonna be here in 6 months. This will be here tomorrow at some point when our engineers push it live, which is super exciting. We've been in beta now for I think probably like 4 to 6 weeks with something like 40 firms to really kind of go and test this product. So it's ready to rock. We integrate with QuickBooks and Xero. You're going to be able to pull things in automatically from those. I'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. And then we also will be pushing to all the tax software that you guys would use if you use Juno. So Drake, Lissert, ProConnect, Access, and UltraTax. The only reason we always say and more, we do get this question quite a bit, is because Thomson Reuters does not like us to use the term UltraTax. So if you ever see and more right now, it mainly means UltraTax for us. And again, going live here tomorrow. And you'll see it if you're on East Coast time. It might be like Friday morning or something. By the time you see it, we try not to. Typically, we don't release it like the peak of the day, so it could come at any time tomorrow. But certainly be there by the end of the day tomorrow. And then it's all the same pricing. So one thing I think that we've heard people be pleasantly surprised about is you can use your existing credits for business returns and partnerships, and in the future you will be able to as well. We didn't want to create like really complex pricing for everybody. That's why we don't do overages and things like that. And so you can use your existing credits that you guys have. If you have credits left this year, you can go ahead and start using them on Friday or Thursday afternoon if you're working late in the afternoon. And then going forward, it's going to be the same. So we're hoping that is really nice. At least what we heard in our initial pricing research was people pleasantly surprised about it. I guess, Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong, given that you mainly do businesses. I think everyone was like, yeah, that sounds great because business returns cost more than 1040s generally. So excited about that. We'll give you credit for it. But Jason, let's have you introduce yourself. Jason's coming in from Evanston, Illinois, and was in Canada before that in Toronto, and runs a company called Fix My Books, and with his wife and his family, and they do both CAS and tax work. But Jason, I won't do it on your behalf. I have for you to introduce yourself here.
Hi, so my name is Jason, and we started our firm in 2020, like a week before the pandemic stuff happened. which was great because we were actually working from home. So it made it a whole lot easier. We started the firm in Canada and we effectively just started with bookkeeping. We then started doing personal tax returns and moved to corporate tax returns in Canada. But I eventually became an EA and I started doing individual tax returns as well because we actually had a lot of Canadian clients that were also US citizens. And so it just started branching out from there. We ended up actually moving fully into doing predominantly corporate returns. We actually moved to the United States as well. And we have a tax practice in the US, in Illinois. And we service people all over the United States, but as well as people overseas. So we have a lot of inbound investment into the US, and obviously we try to help those people outside with their tax filings as much as possible. Um, it's grown a lot since we just started. I mean, we were originally just doing bookkeeping, and then now it's pretty much taxes, really complicated taxes as well. Um, and so we tried to also just focus onto value adds for clients instead of trying to churn things like 1040s. So we moved towards doing a lot more cross-border work as well as tax planning, tax strategy, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. It is, yeah, full time now with pastor elective tax, and especially when you get the foreign angle involved. Super complex, right? Very, very quickly. No doubt about that. But appreciate you joining today. Jason's been a long time Juno user. I was looking at Jason back through. I think you signed up in 24 originally, which I just apologize so much for whatever the product looked like in 2024. We've come a long way since then, but you got to be on the longest surviving list from a customer perspective. We were pretty small back then. I think it was like five of us maybe when you first jumped on, but appreciate that. I assume you've probably noticed some improvements along the way, right? As we've
Yeah,
been on the journey together.
I've seen the entire evolution of this from when it was like the way I actually found this company was really obscure. So I was doing what you shouldn't do, which is try to search for recommendations for things on Reddit. And I I came across a really obscure post about, potential tax prep software coming up. And I thought, oh, okay, let me just have a go, right? Very Australian attitude of mine, just have a go. And I saw it. I thought it was fantastic as a concept and it looked great, even though it was the old version of it.
Right.
I signed up and yeah, I've been using it ever since.
Yeah, I love that. No, that was True Prep back then. Actually, I didn't even think about that. We named it True Prep originally, guys, because I was like, we can build a better version of short prep, basically. And as being an accountant, I'm not like the most creative person in the entire world. And so I thought, well, we'll just name it True Prep and we'll go from there because there's no other like synonym for preparation in this industry than like prep, right? And so, anyways, later we decided that since Rightworks was installing the Sure Prep app for all of our customers, that we should change it to something that was more distinct. And alas, Juno was born. But one comment there, Jason and I were talking before this that I'll just make for everybody here before we jump in is this is an evolution, right? And you will see continuous improvement in the product. One thing we literally haven't even told people is tomorrow we have a pretty major overhaul of our intelligence engine, which is how we make recommendations for like the preparation checklist and in reviewer. Um, there's been some really material improvements in AI and its ability to handle complex scenarios, and a tax return is a complex scenario. And so, actually, you'll also see coming out this week for the first time, we've got a pretty significant overhaul there, which we're really excited about internally because. Before people started signing up in August of last year for the tax automation product, we had not done that many tax returns. We had looked at like the work that my firm is doing. My firm used it the previous tax season, But then all of a sudden, I haven't even looked at the latest number. We did something like 70,000 1040s so far this year. And that is an insane amount of data for us to improve our systems. And we don't train on your client data, so that's not how we improve the system. But we can do things like identify when users tell us that we have an error. So if you fix something on the validation screen, it goes back to our systems and we improve those systems over time. And what's funny, because during tax season, we don't roll out a lot of new things, obviously, so we don't drive you guys crazy. A lot of that's queued up for this release. So we have a huge amount of things coming. But I do want to say, because I know we got a lot of current folks on the line here, you know, this is an evolution that we're in together. I say this on every call. Like, thank you so much for all the feedback you guys provide. We take it and we put it into the product as quickly as humanly possible. And I think you'll see that our product, is getting better at a pace that you just don't see with other software. That's the cool part about building on AI. And I appreciate everybody's patience and your feedback along the way. Like, we are getting better really quickly. I think you're going to really start to see that in the back half of this year. And then, we're building business returns on top of a lot of that information that we've received. We've already built the systems. And so this time we had the time to go out and test with a bunch of beta firms and do that for a few months before we move this thing to general availability this week. So we are getting better at what we're doing as we go along. And I hope and I truly believe you're going to see that as you come along, even as we get to the back part of this year. But let's get to our poll first here. We wanted to understand the level of automation that you guys think you have on business returns. So I'd be really curious to see. I don't know, Jason, where would you rate yourself on this scale of none, 25, 50, or 75 or greater? And I understand there's not a perfect definition. I'm intentionally not defining it for you.
Well, when it comes to the inputting of items now, especially from QuickBooks, this now is getting done without really me having to fiddle with anything.
Yeah.
Which
It's a
makes
nice
our
part of
life.
doing the books yourself, right?
Yeah,
For you
yeah,
guys, especially. Yeah.
yeah. Because before manual data entry, I'm just not a fan. So
Yeah. Yeah, so well, it's easier to clean it in the books. I don't always have control for my folks. We didn't always do their books. We did the books for maybe like 25% of our clients. And so I was cleaning up. And if you don't have the ability to go clean it up in QuickBooks, like if I'm not doing the books, I don't want to go mess with their QuickBooks because I don't
yeah,
later want them to have an issue and come back to me and be like, you're the one doing my QuickBooks, but you didn't do this other thing, right? And so we just didn't do it. But so I was probably a lot more like the people on this list, most of whom have none or 25%, because if I'm not controlling QuickBooks, I can't push it directly in from QuickBooks because there's just so many adjustments that have to be made. Um, we have a second question for you guys as well. Oh, let me share the results on this too, just so you guys can see that. So yeah, most people at none and
wow.
25%. We have very few at 75% or greater. I think you guys are going to be really excited about what we got coming here. And I think there's some big improvements that we can have very, very shortly. Okay, so I think if we can move to the second poll, there we go. Perfect. Mana's got that going. One quick comment for folks. I saw some hands go up. We do have like some folks on the team are manning the chat. So if you've got questions, you can drop them in chat. At the end, we will do like a live Q&A. But if you have them, they'll be answering questions along the way. So if you've got questions, you guys are welcome to drop them in the chat. Okay, and then where's stuff coming in from? Now, this is hilarious. Jason, coming from Canada, I would imagine you guys use Xero and QuickBooks?
Um, so Xero is really an Australian product,
Yeah.
or New Zealand product.
Yep.
We really refrain from using Xero because it's not good at handling sales tax and input tax credits in Canada.
Yep.
So we just don't use it. But in Canada, we would use QuickBooks pretty much for everyone. We're not really big on these Excel workbooks that people like to do unless the client
Yep.
is very small. But in the US, we pretty much just use QuickBooks for all the clients.
Yep. No, that makes sense. And it looks like that's what most people here are doing. You've got something like two-thirds or three-fourths using QuickBooks only. And then you got some Excel, which I get those too, rental properties and things like that. Like I wish I could get
Yeah,
those
rental
folks into,
properties,
into
Excel.
QuickBooks, but I feel like I never will. Schedule C's, things like that.
Yeah,
And then a little bit of Xero as well. Yeah. And the reason I had asked Jason, Xero is a lot stronger outside the US than the US,
yeah,
but we do have Xero out of the gates for folks. And so that will be there for people that are. I know there are certain shops that use Xero and love it. There's a lot of, well, at least from my firm's perspective, we felt like there was too much overhead to try to do both really well, and
Oh
so we
yeah.
were kind of stuck in the QuickBooks world. But and we can all laugh for many hours about the difficulties with Intuit in certain ways. Jason and I were already joking about that this morning. But they're all evolving as well. So I think one thing I'd love to lay out here at a high level for folks is just like how we think about business returns. And again, when I say businesses, I mean partnerships. It's going to drive me crazy every time I say it. That's the last time I'll correct myself. But business partnership, S corp. Here's the thing. It's complex data coming in, and then it's a reconciliation between systems, right? So like I have all these line items on the tax return, and I have these different line items in QuickBooks, and they don't match, right? Because like your management reports, you don't typically want to just use the tax categories. So like there's some sort of merging or subtotaling of things from QuickBooks into your actual tax software, whatever that might be. And even if you can automatically, like there's a connector between QuickBooks and ProConnect, which I use. And so I can automatically push things and group them and do certain things there. But there's still a challenge in that, like, it doesn't create an audit trail. It doesn't tell me what the journal entries are supposed to be, and it doesn't remember what I did the next year. Right. And so the problem is very different than on an individual tax return, is the main thing I want to call out here for people, just so you have an understanding of like what problem it is that we're trying to solve. It's this problem of making those adjustments in a way that's really transparent, and traceable, and then automatically connects it to like the journal entries as well as recommendations on the tax return, so that you can make those adjustments all at once, and then be able to reconcile kind of between the two systems. So Jason, if I kind of described that at a high level, I guess, would you describe the problem differently, or how do you think about that in your practice?
No, that's generally what we prefer, is the ability to just see the edits that we make. Because when you use those systems, like I know ProConnect has their system with QuickBooks, but that is the problem. You change something, you recategorize something there, you don't know who did that or why they did that, and then
Yep.
you don't keep a journal note on it. A year later you come back to it and it's like, why did we put that there? it
Yep.
becomes it
Or where did we
becomes a
put
real
it?
issue.
Even it's like
Yeah,
I don't remember where that one went in the balance sheet, and now I can't make it all match.
yeah, yeah. We generally try to have documentation when we go through and do this sort of stuff, so that's why we sort of gravitated towards having Juno. Well, when you announced this to me to test it, why I really liked it was there was some sort of trail that we could follow all the way through.
Yep.
um, because it's just less documentation we actually have to manually do on our end. So
Right.
anything manual that I can get rid of, I would love it.
I've got this whole manual tie out process that my firm uses, and I wanted to show it. It's just like a total waste of everyone's time if I did that today but I wanted to start with that in this thing and be like, look at what we've been doing, guys. Like, this is not right. Because we go through like every line item, and there's like breakout subtotals, and like we've just been manually building that for years now, which is just crazy. When it's hard enough to find folks, and especially my fully loaded cost is relatively high, right, of my preparers. So to spend
Mm.
hours basically building that work paper is just a huge amount of overhead, and you can just make mistakes, right? And like I make a couple last minute adjustments on the return, and I got to go back and update the work paper. And if I forget to do that, then next year, you're starting with a mess,
Well, if
basically.
you if you're just kind of a generally, you're not systematically organized as just who you are, or you have a staff member that's like that, say that you see their work papers and you get one set of work papers, which is fantastic. Everything's itemized, everything has columns, headings, etc. And then you get another person's just writing numbers in an Excel document. Yeah,
It's a mess.
it's a
Yeah.
mess. Yeah.
I know, it's funny. Yeah, we never actually fully standardized my work papers for businesses and partnerships. We did for 1040s, but I couldn't get the whole staff to use the exact same format. It's like 80% the same, but very annoying as a reviewer to have to go through even slight differences there. And like, but someone really loved like the trial balance method versus like effectively using QuickBooks, and then anyways, neither here nor there. But I never got to full assimilation on my staff of using one format there. So So I think you guys probably have a sense based on how I set up the problem. But in terms of what Juno does, and I'll show you this, but I just want to call out here, we're going to bring stuff in from QuickBooks or Xero. We're going to pull both the P&L and balance sheet automatically based on the dates and the accounting method for that company or partnership. We're going to review it. We're going to reclassify with AI, like automate, what we think the assignments should be, like how QuickBooks should map to the tax return. We're going to tie it out for you automatically. We're going to create a work paper and journal entries as well. And then we're going to push it into your tax software. So I'll show you what all this looks like. And then, but at a high level, just wanted to kind of call out that that's what the flow is. We'll do it for 1120, 1120S, and 1065s. And we'll have K1s here very shortly. I think it's going to be next sprint, which will be about 3 weeks. We just have to think through some of the complexities there of like bringing in a P&L and a K1, right? And then trying to figure out how those things match up. But we will have K1s flowing into those other reporting forms here very, very shortly, like in Q2, I was saying, which would be like another 5-6 weeks. And then we're going to push it to Drake with CERT, ProConnect, Access, and UltraTax as well. And we are looking hard. I'm sure we're going to get this question. Like, I do think Pro Series will come. We've had quite a few requests for that this summer. We want to keep adding to our integration list. We map like 6,000 fields in each piece of software. This is actually before we do all these different types of returns. And so one of the things that we learned this year that I just want to say out loud for folks is, the integrations are really challenging, right? Because most tax software doesn't have APIs. We are going to get to an API connection with ProConnect this summer, which would be really nice. Intuit is opening that up actually even this month. We've already been in the beta program with them for a few weeks. And so that should improve that integration. We also updated, and we'll have a webinar on this probably in about a week and a half or 2 weeks. We have updated our Drake integration. So that brought down the time it takes to push data into Drake by like 90%. So a huge improvement there. So what took 3 minutes before is taking like less than 30 seconds now. The same is launching for UltraTax. Actually, tomorrow we have a major update for UltraTax that's going to reduce the time there. I don't have a final number on that, but it's something like 2/3 to 70% reduction in time. ProConnect will go from browser-based to API. Access is already an API. It's a data file exchange, but we basically can run it through the browser. So those have improved a lot. I do want to say out loud, like it's super complex to be able to make sure that those work and continue to work, like during tax season when the tax software is changing without like they don't send you an email every time they change their tax software as a customer, right? And so it can change at any time. And we built a really robust system to be able to validate that information is going into the tax software and that you're getting accurate results as we went through tax season this year. And I think you guys probably have noticed this if you're a Juno customer, like the difference in stability of the integration from the beginning of tax season to the end was really significant. And it's going to continue to get better because as we go, like with Drake, for example, we're going to use macros. Macros are more stable. Like Drake will just crash if you're clicking through it randomly. And so even if that's not us causing a crash, it results in a pretty bad user experience. So those have improved very significantly and are going to continue to improve. Our team's been really pushing hard on that the last couple months. Jason, which tax software were you using?
So I use CCH, which
Yeah,
was apparently one of the easier ones
yeah, that's right.
to build with.
Because you can do it
But
in the browser.
yeah, so
Um,
the integration's actually been quite seamless. Like when I would move the data from QuickBooks, like people were asking in the chat, can you just use a spreadsheet? Yes. I would
yep.
just use a printout spreadsheet from QuickBooks and then plug it in, and that worked too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Access is one of it's a data file exchange, but we can do it through the browser, so you don't have to have a
Yeah.
desktop app, which is fantastic. It's hard to run a desktop app on one, like my engineers are mostly in their 20s and they don't even know why you would ever have a desktop app for anything because that's not how we build software now. But if you think about software from 20 years ago, that's how all our tech software, 80% of it exists. And so it's been a really funny challenge to try to make sure it works. And people still running like Windows, I don't even know what number is an old number, but 12 or something, and to make sure it works in every single computer in every environment has been a big challenge, but one that I think our team's done a really good job of getting their arms around here. But let's look at the product. So bear with me. I'm gonna stop sharing for just 1 second and get over to the product. So let me reshare the screen. Um, Yeah, we will jump in here and I'll show you. Okay, this should work. Boom, here we go. All right. So I think for most of you, or many of you, you've probably seen Juno before. Sign up the screen properly. And so, this is going to look very familiar, certain parts of it, right? So when I go into Prepare, I can select the return type, and now you're going to see not just a 1040, but different types of returns. And then I can select the client. In this, you'll actually have the current, which year you want to pull, as well as like the accounting, um, the end date for the year, as well as like the accounting, cash or accrual basis, the accounting method that they're using. You can upload a prior year return here. One quick comment there that I want to make for folks is you'll see like we're going to try to pull in the prior year data. We'll have it obviously if you use Juno this year, for next year, but we also are going to try to pull that in more often. It actually helps us prevent errors on the returns. And I'll give you like a really interesting one. So we can actually identify and prevent errors even on extraction of source documents for a 1040 as an example, because if we look at the prior year information, we know it's predictive of the current year. And so that's going to help us go. We actually already at 98, 99% on most forms, but we actually think we can push even harder to a point where like it's going to be significantly less. There will be less errors that pretty much ever occur, because I can look at like take a W-2 as an example. Like box one is going to be some multiple of everything else on that form, right? And withholdings are almost always going to be basically, I don't know, 20, 25% of the total. And so we can use the interrelated fields there as well as prior year to actually identify data that doesn't make sense and start to do a better job of not just validating by extracting information through foundational models, which work really, really well, but then using the way the data actually comes together to both predict and cause additional checks on data, if you want to think about it that way. So that all actually begins to roll out this week as well, which is going to be super exciting. But we have some good things coming there on extraction. But as you set up a customer, so that's all you have to do there. And then you basically can go through and actually let me delete this thing, and I'm going to re-sign up for QuickBooks here. I'll go through the initial sign up flow for you guys just to show you how simple this is. So obviously, I'm in a demo account here, but you got to log in through Intuit. So this is literally the whole flow. I log in through Intuit. It's going to identify me. It's going to pull all my companies here. I simply select the company I want. I already put in the year and the accrual or cash. And then I hit next, and it's going to be connected. I only have to do this once. Once I'm connected, all I have to do is hit fetch documents, and the thing's going to pull in. So we're done here. It's got the profit and loss and the balance sheet. What we will do over time, I didn't want to start here because it's going to be quite complex. We'll start to pull key accounts as well, but that's something that's going to come over the next 2 or 3 sprints. I'd really like to see us pull like executive comp or even like all compensation reports, so we could look at salaries versus a W-3. Like there's some really cool stuff that we're going to start to do, but let's first get the basics down, right? So we're bringing in the P&L and the balance sheet. You can also drag in additional files here. You can drag in whatever you want, and I'll show you a couple examples of how you can do that here on the next couple screens. But if you wanted to right here, you could upload a W-3, right? Or you could upload loan documents or whatever it might be along the way, and they'll be added to your binder automatically. And then, so while this processes, this takes usually about 1 to 1.5 minutes to process. Since we've got like 500 plus people on here, I'm going to just pop over into another account, and I want to show you guys exactly what happens on the screen. So this is your validation screen. You guys will recognize this if you've done it with Schedule Cs or rental properties or whatever. It's going to look very similar, but there's going to be a couple interesting differences. So one is at the very top here, it's going to highlight things that it wants you to look at or need your attention. So for example, like officer compensation has dropped sharply on this particular, this is just like an example client that I'm pulling here, which is a great call out, like something that I want my staff members to be looking at, that by the way is very easy to overlook. This is an S Corp, so officer comp really matters. So it's just saying like, hey, verify that's a reasonable wage, right, for this type of customer. The second here, and I love this call out because I probably wouldn't have caught this, is gain or loss on an investment account. So it's saying, hey, you've got a Fidelity brokerage account and the balance has grown this year, and there's probably like interest or something that should be flowing in here into income. but we don't see anything flowing into income. So you should double check that to make sure that there shouldn't be something else there. So I thought that was a really good call out of something that could very easily be missed. Two other quick things I'm going to show you. Then Jason, I'll have any of your comments. We also have like alerts on certain line items. If we've seen like really significant changes year over year, or we see something that might need your attention, we will call out like these little red bullets here. And again, like this is really meant to be like guiding you to where you need to look and spend time on this thing. And sorry, I'm going to bring this down so you guys can see the bottom of the screen just a little bit more here. And I can also attach documents to certain line items. So I went ahead and did this on one, but I uploaded like an interest statement here that supports basically the interest income. So if you want to put that in your binder, so you have everything in one work paper, then you can do that here. You can add PDFs as you see fit. And then I can reassign these things if I wanted to. If for some reason this isn't gross receipts, but needs to go somewhere else, I can go ahead and reassign it here. And I can also make adjustments here. And so you can make adjustments here and it's going to automatically update the net income, and it will update your journal entries, which is really cool. So if you make adjustments here, it's going to also recommend a journal entry at the same time. And then
See,
really
that's I
quickly,
like
yeah,
that.
go ahead, Jason. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I like that because it's not going to affect the books per se. It's going to just give you a list of JEs, the AJEs that you need
Yep.
to then give to the bookkeeper, whatever they can make the change. I also like that you've got that section there where you can add everything into the binder. So
Yeah.
later on, you're not losing track of what you've done.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about that, like so much of the work you do on the work paper, like you were just describing before, is to create that audit trail, and
Yeah.
it should be doing it along the way. If you make any sort of adjustment here, it should automatically give you the full audit trail, journal entries, work paper, copy of the original thing if you want to upload that, which is really helpful. I know for many of you, if you're using a preparer and reviewer model for your firm where you have two different people doing those things, this is an incredible time saver on the review side as well, not just on the prep side, although it is there as well. So it automatically did these journal entries. I don't know if you guys, I'll just call this out explicitly. So like I didn't do these yet. I did put in one previous journal entry here just so you can see when you do, you can add any journal entry that you want. But these two are automatically suggested by Juno. So you can see like the meals disallowance, right? The 50% deductibility on meals is here recommended. I can accept that. And it's going to put it on the final list of accepted journal entries. Oh, sorry, it actually just duplicated that one. So I'm going to pull this one out. And then the other one is reclassing opening balance equity. So this is a really interesting one. It's actually saying like, hey, you've got an opening balance equity on one of your accounts. This should actually be moved to something else, right? So it's actually recommending you move it to retained earnings. I also, if I were this or my QuickBooks client, I'm going to probably go look and figure out why they have an opening balance equity. That is like a classic mistake in QuickBooks. That is one of those automations that can end up costing you more time than it saves you. And then it's going to give you the total of the debits and credits to make sure they balance here on the journal entries. The other quick thing I'll show you is on the balance sheet. You've got the same kind of thing, right? So it's got recommendations based on the balance sheet. So if you add new assets, for example, right, it's going to say like, hey, your asset account balance went up. There's probably maybe some assets that you need to capitalize, so you should look at that. Similarly, it's calling out like their cash balance and their fidelity balance, right? And so just notifying that like the investment activity is properly reflected on the P&L. So this is kind of related to what you were seeing on the other screen, but really cool to see that it's calling out. Like you can see, there's a level of sophistication here that's pretty neat that people could certainly miss. Again, you can like connect things here. I can make notes on these different fields. It's going to push that to the work papers, and I can see my journal entries kind of everywhere. These aren't different journal. It's like one list of journal entries, basically, right? But you can see them anywhere, so that you can continue to check those over time. One quick note there, just since I didn't click into it before, is like I can add more journal entries in here. So we also, like, our system is going to start to learn based on the feedback you give us about the journal entries. Like if I reject a journal entry for opening balance equity, it goes back to our engineering team to say like, hey, why did we recommend this? Because this person seems to think this is not a good journal entry. And so our team will look at that and continue to improve this over time. You'll see this as well if you're using 1040s, if you're an active customer, you'll see this showing up now in the binder as well as in reviewer. where you can now give feedback to the system. And this is a self-learning system. So when you guys are saying, hey, this isn't relevant for this client, it actually goes back to a team of accountants that review this now to see if there's something there that we should adjust in the prompting of the system or the context that we give the system to make better recommendations over time. So you can imagine, like we did, something like 70,000 or more returns at this point this year. Um, if people are giving us feedback across 70,000 tax returns, like how quickly this system is going to get really, really good. And so, again, you'll start to see those improvements rolling out now. But if you're using 1040s, you'll also realize there's the ability to give feedback now. So you can actually like thumbs down things and you can put in your own like reviewer notes and things like that. So this similar design structure is going to be used across the 1040s as well. Perfect. And then that is basically what you're doing in Prepare, right? And I can go in here and make adjustments if I want to, like if I'm going to go capitalize assets and then have depreciation expense flow in, I can do that. I'll show you in just a minute kind of how this flow works once you get past this stage. But this is basically the extraction of information and the initial setup for pushing it into your tax software. And so then I was going to move over to export, and I'll show you guys kind of what that looks like here. I can't show like all five tax softwares, or we just take the rest of the time doing this, but we will send out examples of what each one looks like in export. And by the way, if you're already a user, you can start exporting tomorrow afternoon, so you can go in and check it out yourself. It is a little bit different, and I'll show you here on Drake what this looks like. It's probably the most similar for Access, Jason, so you might not have great context here, but this is kind of what Drake looks like. You'll see like a download of the trial balance there show up. And again, this is different for every tax software, but this gets downloaded automatically. And then you go into Drake and it's going to import that information. You're going to go ahead and import it into Drake. This may be one of the more manual flows. I think Access is going to be very similar, Jason, to what you guys are doing on 1040s. But
This
you
I
select
thought
all
would
and then
be
hit
more
import.
I thought this would
Yeah,
be more complicated than it was
yeah,
looking. Grant walked me through it. It's like super simple.
yeah,
It takes 5 minutes, to
yeah,
set
that's
it up.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Even just to the initial setup. And then on this, on Drake, guys, this is in real speed. It takes like 30 seconds maybe to
Yeah.
go through this, and all the information's in there. So it's a pretty quick export. I mean, to be honest, you know what's funny? We did this the other day. Drake was our slowest export this year, and particularly painful because it took up your computer as well. So like you never saw this, Jason, on the on your side of the business, but the with Drake and UltraTax, it would tie up your like keyboard, right? And so that's particularly painful. So we've been working really hard to improve the speed there so that people, because like just what product do you use in the world where you can't use your computer even for a couple minutes? It's really painful. So we're trying to get both of those down to like 30 seconds where it's just a really quick push. Access is great because you can just do it in the browser. You don't even have to have a desktop app. Um, Perfect. So let's come back to reviewers. So then let me just really quickly what you're doing here at this point. Oh, sorry, I haven't even showed you the binder or the work paper. Let me show you one other thing. So at this stage, I've got all the data pushed into your tax software, and I have a work paper here. So I've got an Excel work paper that I can show you guys. That's going to have all the original information in it, right? You got your P&L, your balance sheet, and then it's got some detail for like M1, M2, some of those things. It also will have like the notes. If you put notes in, I didn't put any notes in, but if you put adjustments or notes, they're going to show up here, right, in this work paper. So again, like nice audit trail for you if you like to use Excel. If you want to use a PDF, and bear with me, I'm trying to click around while I'm looking at everything else on my screen. Okay, if you want to use a PDF, you can do that as well. Let me pull it up here I'm going to show you a reviewer here momentarily, and I want to show you the binder here as well. So you've got a binder that looks a lot like your 1040 binder where you've got like your review plan here, and it's got actual like reviewer items in there. So if it sees something it wants you to have a second look at, it's going to actually tell you like it's showing that the M1 does reconcile, like it's going through and reconciling between book and tax and making sure that that reconciles. Is one of the hardest things to do as a preparer of business returns. And it's also going to recommend like the M1 items. So, oftentimes your tax software is putting things on the M1 in your software automatically. So we're not filling out the M1 for you because we don't want to override those fields and create errors. Similarly, like retained earnings, the bottom line of equity is typically a calculated field. So
Mhm.
we're not going to override that either. But you guys will see something in the next few weeks where you do have the option of overriding that field. If you want to, there's going to be like a toggle that comes in here in case you do want to override for some reason. But right now, we're not going to override a calculated field. So that to prevent errors basically from happening. So imagine like retained earnings may change when I have depreciation expense come through. And so I don't want to override that field and cause, the fixing there that has to happen. But this will be a PDF binder for you. It's going to have all the original, the P&L and the balance sheet. And then it's also going to have like any PDFs that you uploaded. Right. And so this is a PDF that I attached to like, I mean, it's a mortgage interest statement. So this wouldn't make sense, but I attached it to like
Mhm.
interest expense. Um, Sorry, I just had to grab a PDF that was anonymized for that. And then a last quick thing I'll show you guys here is reviewer. So you're familiar with this probably from the 1040. We have something very similar here for business returns where it's going to give you like a list of anything we think needs to be looked at again. So in this case, what it was looking at on this particular one, I will say this is a return that we did. So fortunately, there's not like any errors here that it's calling out, but it is calling out that we resolved this 1125E. So it's like threshold. It's just like a reporting threshold for officer compensation, right? And it's going in checking to make sure that that was reported correctly and that it ties back to QuickBooks. This is looking at the entire, like it looks both at the original source documents as well as the return, as well as the prior year return to look for any major changes that might indicate there's an error of some sort on the return. And then, like I mentioned before, you have the ability actually here as the preparer. If you are handing this off to a different reviewer, you can actually add things and you can edit these items on the list. And that sends feedback as well to our team so that if you, for some reason you thumbs down this and say it's not relevant, we're actually going to get that and make an assessment of if we need to improve the system over time. So, Jason, did I miss anything there?
No, we actually use that quite a bit because I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, it's never nothing's ever perfect with these things. Human beings are not perfect either. But we like this because it flags a lot of things that, we may have missed. You know, just to have a second pair of eyes at it, you may want to look at it again. There's always something. Yeah, a tax return will never be perfect, but you can get it close to perfect.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing I'll say for folks too, and this is a bit of a peek behind the scenes here on what we've kind of been working on. We what the hardest part on reviewer is if you give an AI system the context of like the entire world of tax knowledge, it's going to come up with a lot of things, some of which are incredible catches. Other things are what we call like false positives. So it might be looking at something that is like, hey, you need to double check this. But it's not relevant for that return because of just the amount of context that we're handing off to the agent or model. And one of the things we're launching this week is a really different kind of intelligence system and how we use those agents that is a very significant reduction in false positives. And so, without losing like the nuggets of goodness, we are going to start to be able to make recommendations in a way that's a lot more accurate and streamlined for you. So I think, yeah, Jason, you kind of mentioned that, hey, reviewer is one of your favorite parts of that product. It's going to get infinitely better. Like I think we were seeing, I know Jack's going to kill me for saying this because he's on manning the chat. You guys can get the real answer if you want, but I think the last I heard it was more than a 75% reduction in false positives. So like if we were recommending six things before, and two of them were like real things that may have actually been an error, and four of them are things that like you should double check that look like they may be an error, but they actually
Yeah.
are not. That can waste time for people, right? Because then they go
Yeah.
check all six things. And so like it's going to go from six to two basically so that you're only seeing what is relevant and where we have a significant signal of an actual error, not just an AI system guessing at it basically.
Yeah.
So that should be a nice improvement. Okay, coming back then for folks, and I'm going to leave some time for Q&A. Let me jump back to where we were. So yeah, we'd love to get your feedback. I think if you guys, we are like figuring out what topics we want to cover this summer. And so here's a poll coming up now of like what kind of information that you guys want to hear about. We really would love to understand kind of how we're doing on these, as well as like topics in the future, things like that, that you guys want to get from our team. Like one of the things I've said to our team is, hey, I've noticed in talking to clients this year that the folks that struggled to get off the ground, like process was a huge challenge for them. I had a really interesting conversation, like probably my most interesting call this year was with a team where the admin was like, I hate Juno. I don't want to use it. And I was kind of like, why? What happened? And she's like, well, before my job was so much easier. I just put all the files in a folder and I sent it off to the prep team. And when we really dug into it, now she was the one running Juno, right? So she's got to go validate information and export information. She's got to try to do the mapping based on prior year forms. And she was like, this has made my job harder, which is obviously not what we set out to do. But the reason I bring that up as an example is, they're asking more from a particular person on staff. And that happened to be the person that's like taking all the phone calls during tax season. So it was a good example to me of like a process failure, in that, like, you're like, oh, let's get this started. Okay, if Millie on my team's the one making sure documents are in, then she should be the one dropping it into Juno. That worked on my team because Millie had capacity to do that. We actually had a little bit more admin capacity than we needed as we streamline, like, collecting client documents and things like that. But if you don't have that capacity, then it's a process issue. So anyways, one quick example there of like process issues that I saw popping up. But if you guys have other topics that you want to hear our team, give you some resources on, we're really curious to hear that over the next few weeks. I think we'll have a Drake update. We're gonna have kind of a best practices webinar that we put together. And if you want to hear about other things, then we're happy to create some content around that. It's been really fun to see like how different firms have adopted this technology, and it's fun to see kind of how we get further into this as we go through the years. Jason, anything on your top of mind for you guys that would come to mind while people finish answering the question?
So one of the reasons we actually liked Juno as well was its ability to want to integrate with other things. You see
Mhm.
a lot of tax softwares and everything in the tax space, they want to just do one thing and then they don't want to integrate with anything else. And it's really irritating because you end up with this like 20, 30, software tech stack, and everyone has this bill at the end of the month, which is annoying. Um,
Yeah,
but
SaaS soup, someone
yeah,
called
this
it for
SaaS
me.
bill. But yeah, one of the things we did like with Juno was the fact that, it's going to integrate with the tax software. They're open to integrating with different tax softwares. And so CCH was, nothing like CCH. So it was great.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, we also had TaxDome, right? So a lot of people are asking about TaxDome. And so
Yep.
our flow would be QBO, Juno, CCH, Juno, and then push from CCH to TaxDome, right? So
Yep. Yep.
it just ended up working really well as a cycle and a flow. And instead of having to move between these different softwares, like this softwares where you're inputting data, which is a totally different software, and then or you're
Right.
doing it manually or whatever. Um, that's something which really we preferred about this type of software where you're trying to integrate with everything so you're not having to have 50 different products, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Actually, it's funny you bring that up. I will say we have for folks on the line, like a couple of things I should have mentioned on TaxDome. You will be able to push documents in from TaxDome. We have to the way they push information in on business returns is a little bit different in terms of the client portal. So we're working with their team on that. I think it is pretty imminent, and I'm sure Grant and Jack know probably exactly what the timing is on that, and probably have maybe even shared that in the chat already. But that is coming very, very soon, like the next couple, next probably 3 weeks would be my guess in the next sprint. We do need their team to like give us the endpoint so we can pull that information. So that's certainly something where we don't fully control that timeline, but the team we've already talked to the TaxDome team, and we're super excited to be able to pull that in. And then, Jason, it's funny you mentioned that because we'll have some more news. This is a bit of a teaser. I'm not going to be specific about this, but we'll have some very good news throughout the summer in terms of like a significant expansion of integrations for us in terms of the systems that we support. So you'll see we have done a ton of work on integrations on our team, and we will be giving you guys some really good news even in the next 4 to 6 weeks. There should be some big announcements there that will expand how well we work with different systems in the industry. So yeah, I have a vision of with Thomson Reuters and Walters Kluwer's in particular, one of the reasons I have tried to that in my firm we ended up leaving Thomson Reuters was because of we had to use all their products because their data was like trapped in their
Yeah.
system, right? And so, and I don't mean that to be derogatory towards anyone. I there are sometimes legitimate reasons for that. But oftentimes there are not. They just want to cross sell all their other products to you, right? And so, which is the way of the software world. So I kind of get it. But at Juno, like we're one of the little guys, we want to work with everybody, right? And so our vision there is we would work with any system that you guys are using. That is super important for us. And whether it's us or TaxDome or any of these other small guys, if you will, we all have a strong incentive to work together because we want these products to work as well as the ecosystem of products that you would see in a Thomson Reuters type ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I think it's really good reason to like for these teams to continue to work together on that stuff.
I just want to say as well, like I'm just some random guy, right? Like I just own I just own my own tax practice. The only reason I'm here is because I reach out to you guys and I say, hey, can you upgrade this to to the devs? And then, you guys just do it. So
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
if you guys don't see your software there, if you see something that would be valuable, just tell them. They
yeah.
probably will, read that and then they're going to see other people's comments along a similar line and then they're going to move towards it if enough people need it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think you guys will find, I say this all the time, and I really hope you realize it's actually true that we receive, when we have a product launch, we'll go and go into Modern Tax Pros. If you guys aren't there, if you're a customer, I would highly recommend it because people go and request things there. And when we send a release out, we'll tag the people that requested that feature. And we've already tagged like probably maybe 150 of our, customers this year. We work with about 500 firms, and I don't know if those people are all at different firms, but let's say something like a third of the people that are customers of ours for this last tax season actually had an impact on a feature that got released within 6 months, right, of requesting that. So imagine like at QuickBooks, we were asking for like, I don't know, images of checks for something like, 100 years before they finally released it. And I say that somewhat jokingly, but it did feel like 100 years. And so like maybe in your whole career, like you've actually never had an impact on a feature that got released, from an Intuit. Like that is not the experience that our folks have. Obviously, as we scale, like it gets a little harder to continue to do that at a granular level. But if we hear, repeated requests for something, we're going to build it in the product. And our team has been doing a ton of that in the last few months, and we're really proud of that as a team. Like, I always say to folks, I'm kind of looking at my team out the window here, and we hire actual US based accountants, right? We have a team that works on like when someone comes back and says, hey, this wasn't reported correctly, our team reviews that in detail and we improve the system for all of our customers. So your feedback actually has a huge impact on our entire customer base. I always give the example of like New York wages for out of state wages in New York. There's a specific rule on how you report that. Someone reported that in January to us and gave us a really nice detailed kind of conditional logic list of things we need to do there. We built it into the product. Now the product just does it automatically. So you don't have to train the staff member on how to deal with what is an unusual tax rule. The more we do that, the better our product gets. So the more you guys give us feedback, the better the product will be for you and for all the other firms that use it. Okay, so I want to look at the Q&A really quickly here. Let me see if there's any, and Amanda, if anybody wants to jump in and help me give specific things, I can do that. I see a booking thing here. Okay, let me look for key questions here in the chat. Bear with me here, guys, for just a minute while I get caught up on this. Yeah, so I see a couple questions on costs. Like this will be the same as a regular credit. We have discounted like our 100 credits, 100 returns is our minimum. I know there are people underneath that. We're trying to just basically make sure we've got the capacity. Like the one bummer for us in the way we do this is that because we have a desktop app, we about a third of the time people have an issue with the initial install because of the permissions on their computer. It's actually not our application. It's like whether or not they can install something on their laptop. It's very common for practices to limit what you can install on a laptop. And so because of that, we literally have to just have a sales engineer on because it creates a really bad experience for someone if they can't get it installed. And so that is why we do the 100 minimum more than anything else, is actually because of the sales engineering required to just sit on with customers. So that's definitely something we will hopefully continue to make easier so that we could, look at that over time. So there is that minimum, and we do get that all the time, that question, but it is something that we will, at least right now, we're going to continue to have. The good news is with the 100 minimum, you can use individual returns and businesses. So like the smaller practices, can use both types of returns now, which gives people closer to the 100 if they're not getting it. And then I see a question about K1s. So scheduled activities with K1s. Yeah. So on K1s, what we will probably start with is the core, like page one for both federal and state. And then on footnotes, we actually haven't gone through this yet, but I would assume out of the gates it's going to be page one, basically, or sometimes the state is 2 pages, but I'm still going to call it page one, like the core boxes coming off the K1. On the footnotes, the data extraction is more inconsistent there. It's actually not inaccurate. It's just is harder for us to know exactly what adjustment needs to be made from that information. So we do extract, from the footnotes of the K1s, but we don't always push it directly into the software. What we do on 1040s is probably exactly what we're going to do on the business returns, which is if we see something that should be considered that's coming out of like the statements or the footnotes, we're going to put that in the binder, just like we do probably with 1040s. And so we will support K1s. We'll do it that way. Another one I know probably came up earlier is like 8825s on rental properties. So we are working on that now. We expect that to be in the next one, maybe 2 sprints max. So something like 3 to 6 weeks out, but we are planning to support that. One of the things we're still working through, just to be transparent with folks, is like if we're pulling from classes in QuickBooks. And I just don't want to officially commit to that yet because we need to go and like do some feasibility testing there. It always sounds easy to pull that kind of thing in, but we need to be able to do it consistently without any issues. And so that's going to be one that we need to do a little bit of work on to understand the scoping there. I'd love to be able to pull by class and separate like rental properties by class as an example. But in order to do that, it depends on like the data quality in QuickBooks, right? And so I don't know, Jason, if you've got a comment there, but that's one of the ones with my team where I was like,
That's
we need a
that's the
little
one
minute to design this.
so that was actually when you let me alpha test this, that
Yeah.
was the first thing that I brought up. So
Oh,
there
you're the one
were,
that started the class
as you can
internally here.
see, if you do actually make a comment, they will try to implement and
Yeah.
change something.
Yeah, we talked about it and we'll get there. We just need a little bit of time to make sure we do it right. What I worry about there, Jason, is like I've got to have some way of having a user tell me they want to use classes. Like I need to go into QuickBooks and figure out that there are classes. Then I need to have them tell me what they mean. Are they really different businesses, or are we using the consolidation of all the classes? Right. So, anyways, there needs to be a little bit of UI built for that. But great. When I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, we got to do this. We have to
Yeah.
figure out a way to do it. So that is one that we'll get to. Okay, let me see if there's other. Okay, YouTuber for advisor. 2 minutes left. Yeah, any last questions here? Um, QuickBooks integration. Someone asked about QuickBooks Desktop. We don't have that. I don't think we will. I don't even know that we can pull directly from desktop. I don't know, Jason, if you guys still have folks there. I don't think it's quite as easy to pull data out of it, but you could certainly export the reports from desktop and send those into Juno.
Desktop, I would also say with QB, or Intuit rather, they are terminating support for that, I believe. So you may want to move that client over to QBO anyway.
Yeah.
And you're going to find it very difficult to get any sort of integration with the QB desktop file. So
Yeah, that's
on
right. I know
any
they're
software.
yeah, exactly. I know. That's been a long time coming for Intuit trying to push people over to QBO. But I do still have some desktop folks. You can definitely export the reports there and pull them in that way.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then I see, I mean, a lot of interest on or questions about like pricing and purchase packages and things like that. We've got information out on the site. We'll link to it. I think we can probably send that in a recap as well. We do have like public pricing, which I think we're the only competitor that does that now. And so you guys can go out to the site and go see what that looks like. We do like discount during the summer. I would recommend that people come in. We do run like everyone else in tax software and all the things so that we don't have to try to onboard like 4,000 firms in December. We do discount during the summer to pull that forward. I will also say, like, because process is the number one challenge, I really, really recommend people like get started in the summer, just so that you have time while you still have some returns to go ahead and like work through the process. Because we saw the number one reason for failure in Q1 during tax season was because people came on in January or February and it was just too late to like train the staff. So I would highly recommend coming in a little bit early, just so you can get a better experience and you have time to kind of train your staff on that stuff. If you buy credits now, you can use them now into next tax season is kind of the way it works. Um, Perfect. Well, I know we're at time, and I can stay a little bit, but Jason, I want to just thank you for joining. It was super helpful. I wish, guys, I was telling Jason beforehand, I'm like, I wish we could just have our customers present. It's too much to ask for individuals running firms to do that, but I love having customers on here. I think it's just so critical. So, any final words, Jason, or anything I missed along the way?
No, no, just keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate you reaching out to me just to give an opinion. Um, we recommend a lot of software, but we only recommend things we'd actually use. We don't like stuff that makes our lives difficult, and we wouldn't want to advocate for it otherwise. So, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
No, I really appreciate that. And we've had so many customers that have, um, you know, been incredibly helpful throughout tax season. Just really, really great feedback. And our team's always listening, and we're getting better constantly. So I really appreciate that. It's been invaluable for us. Perfect. Well, if you guys have other questions, you always can get into like go to the Juno website. You can sign up for a trial there. If you're a Juno customer, use our support team, guys. We've got real accountants that are hanging out, US based accountants sitting here in San Diego. I can see a few of them right in front of me. It takes like 5 seconds. If it answers one question and you are not satisfied with it, if you're like, no, that's not the right answer, you will go directly to a human and you will be in touch with them within 15 seconds. So we do that to try to provide you with a really high level of service in support. And so you can always get a hold of those folks in trial, or if you're an active customer, use it. You know what I mean? It'll send you to the learning center if you're asking a question about like export on Drake, something like that. And then if it doesn't satisfy you the very first time, it sends you to a human. And the point in doing that is so we can get through some of the like just the Q&A stuff, so we can actually put humans against the people that actually need it. So you will get in touch with someone very, very quickly, and they are not an AI robot. They will tell you like, hey, this is, my name is Josh, or whoever it might be. And it's actually you're talking to someone that's actually worked in the profession, which I think is really cool. Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for the time. Yeah, if you guys have other questions, hit up support or reach out to anybody on the Juno team. Jason, thank you so much for taking the time as well. And we'll wrap it up here. But thanks everybody, and enjoy the summer here while we have a little bit of time to work on what we're going to do for next year.
Thanks, David.
Thanks everybody.